Hi again, this is Randy Lee with Apex Tactical Specialties, and welcome to our tutorial on the installation of our Duty Carry Action Enhancement Kit. The Action Enhancement Kit for carry applications was intended to use our sear and allow you to have a mid 5-pound range trigger pull, which is light enough to be controllable but heavy enough to reduce the incidence of unintentional discharging of the firearm for people that either carry on duty or have concealed carry permits. So what I want to do first is actually thank Rangemaster of San Luis Obispo for donating the M&P 40 for us to do some of the testing on, as well as the installation of the parts. I'm going to take a trigger pull measurement of the gun. Now this is a gun that's been fired before. This is one of their range rentals. So we're expecting to have the trigger pull somewhere maybe in the late high 5s, maybe 6-pound range. We'll use our digital trigger pull gauge again. And see what we get for a pull. It's at 6.5 pounds. So that's about right. That's what we found is fairly consistent for a gun where the parts have been burnished in. With the stock factory trigger components in place, one of the things that aggravates or frustrates some M&P owners is the amount of sight picture upset, because there's the amount of over travel as you are pulling through. Once the striker is released from the sear, all that force ends up coming back in the free run, and the only thing that's stopping it is the over travel stop, which is the contact pad on the frame and on the trigger itself. I want to see if we can get some of the sight movement, and it'll be different for everybody, but for my size hands it's a fairly noticeable amount. I'm focusing on the front side, I'm just slowly pressing through to the rear, but hopefully you can detect it and see that there is some movement laterally of the front sight. That can affect your overall accuracy by increasing the dispersion from shot to shot. It only needs to be a couple thousandths to affect your point of impact at a range of even 10 yards. So if you extrapolate that out to 15 or 25 yards, that can be as much as several inches off the mark from the center point of aim. So what I want to do, or what I'm going to do now, is actually just replace the striker block, which we've already shown in the video previously. So what I've done is I've removed the sear block or sear housing out of the frame, and now what I'm going to do is just basically pull out the sear and sear spring and plunger assembly. So I'm going to drift out, or actually I'm going to remove the ejector first so I can remove the sear pin. And I didn't push it out all the way, I just wanted to keep it sort of stationary, so when I install the rest of the parts, it hopefully will make it a little bit easier for me. So right down here at the very bottom, hopefully you can see it, hopefully I can find something to point to it. This is the sear, plunger, and spring that's captive in there. I'm going to use a very small set of tweezers to pull this out. I don't know if you can see it, but this thing it's a tiny little plunger. It's very easy to lose. If you drop it in an area, I'd probably recommend finding a small magnet and running it around the area, and you should be able to pick it up. Now that we've removed the sear and it's out of the way, you can see the very, very tiny sear plunger, and below it is the spring. So I'm going to remove the plunger itself. It is so tiny that it's easily lost. If you do happen to drop it, I'd recommend finding a small magnet and running it around the area, because it is magnetic, so you should be able to pick it back up. The spring is a really small diameter, so you need something fairly small, almost toothpick size, or even a small punch, or even a small nail, to get into the recess to be able to remove the spring. And that's the spring. Hopefully you can see it. It is pretty tiny. And now once I've removed those, I'm going to find the duty rated sear spring, and install that back into the hole. And then with a small set of tweezers again, take the plunger, and I want to make sure that I've got the rounded, larger diameter dome surface of the plunger facing up, because that's actually what bears against the bottom of the sear. Part is so tiny you can tell I'm having a little bit of difficulty putting this thing into position. Okay, I have that now in place. We'll take our hard sear, rest it over the surface. And then again, use another small punch from the opposite side just to align the pinholes. Press the pin back in. And then check just to make sure I've got the plunger and everything in the right position, to make sure I'm not pinching or binding the spring itself or having the plunger out of position to where it doesn't allow free movement of the sear. Now I can reinstall the sear housing block into the frame. At this point, I'm just out of curiosity want to see what results we have with just using the sear and the duty rated sear spring, to see what we get as far as trigger pull weight and the quality of the pull. Our ultimate striker block is already in the slide. And we'll get a measurement off of just those modifications. Okay, so we went from roughly over 6 pounds to 4 pounds, 2.8 ounces, which is about what we'd expect. Typically in the low 4s.